Wherefore, Series 3, Episode 7. People who meet Natasha Butterfield in a casual context tend to assume she is just another Stroud hippie. She has more hair than seems reasonable for just one person, and a penchant for brightly coloured clothes. She smiles a lot, and says terribly positive things, and that only after the encounter will it occur to you that the positivity was a bit ominous. Threatening, even. She is one of the other wizards about whom the 7 wizards, who do not actually run Stroud, are largely in denial. This suits Natasha perfectly well. She has no interest in running the kinds of things Stroud's 7 wizards are bothered about, and prefers to be left to her own devices. People who meet Natasha in other, more professional contexts do not tend to think that she is just another Stroud hippie. When dressed for work, she is sharp, alarmingly so. Her suits are so tailored to fit that it seems aggressive. Sometimes she favours the kind of dangerous heeled shoes that look like fetish gear. Sometimes she favours designer manly shoes. On those days, her hair is so tame that you might think a trained professional had worked on it for an hour or so. Impressions matter. And usually in a professional context, Natasha Butterfield wants to give you the impression that you should be terrified of her. She's very good at informing people's thoughts. One of Natasha's main achievements on the thought-forming front is to have rendered uncertain the very notion of Painswick. People who haven't been there in a long time tend to still believe it exists. Anyone who gets close will become fairly sure it was just a whimsical idea, a picture postcard joke about the Cotswolds, whose punchline you can no longer remember. This is because Natasha lives in Painswick, and she is heartily sick of people buying second homes there, pushing up house prices relentlessly, changing the character of the place, and generally annoying her. So these days they come to view a property, and by the time they leave, they are entirely persuaded that Painswick isn't real. She has set this up so that the people who live full-time in the village know perfectly well that it exists. Those who merely drive through it are increasingly convinced that Painswick is just the name for the road between Stroud and Cheltenham. Her other goal in doing this is to empty the golf course of golfers. It annoys her greatly that there is a historical golf club built into the much more important ancient earthwork. The more people forget that Painswick exists, the fewer golfers there will be. One day she intends to celebrate their total absence from the site by lighting an actual beacon on the beacon, on a spot currently being used as a green. Natasha likes old things. The older, the better. She also likes dead things and having conversations with dead things. Much of her magic falls broadly into the category of necromancy, and this is another reason for not wanting contact with other wizards. It's an area of magic that still attracts a lot of resentment and prejudice. Even wizards who traffic with demons can be weirdly squeamish about anyone raising the dead, even if it is just for a bit of a chat and a catch-up. There's more to it than that, though. It's a love of dead things, not to a necrophilia degree. A love that embraces the broken creatures left as roadkill and that wants to scoop them up and take them home and let them rot down somewhere safe so as to reclaim the bones. It's a love that is sparked by Victorian photos of dead children and images of catacombs in places distant and exotic. Mummies and bog bodies, bone houses and barrows all attract her. The smell of decay, the compost bin, the stagnant marsh water rich with scents of decomposing plant matter. The Elbley Marshes. You probably won't run into Natasha at her day job, where she sometimes sits in an office that used to be a storage cupboard and is now mostly marshland from the Iron Age. Not many people make it into that office. Mostly you will only get to talk to her by email. If you did see her, you might be struck by how incongruous she seems in her very modern clothing with her very modern technology, with her boardwalk and her reed hat. She's still studying the decay of reality, even without Simon to help her map the way everything is breaking down. The decay of reality has its own special smell. It's an interesting, conflicting sort of issue. On one hand, the decay is inherently attractive. The more climate chaos there is, the more people and others will die. She does really love dead things. But the thing about dead things is that you can only get a steady supply of them if there is also a steady supply of live things. You can't relish death without taking life seriously. So while in some ways she would enjoy watching it all fall apart, that's really too short-term an investment, and one way or another, Natasha is going to have to make sure there are enough living things for the longer term. I expect you have questions. Why do I know this now, when last time we went to Elbley and saw the marshes I had no idea what was going on? Am I pulling one of those awful narrator stunts where I've just withheld information so I can get more drama out of it later? I promise that isn't it, because that kind of storytelling annoys me. Last time we looked at this issue, I had no idea who was running Simon, and my efforts to see her did not lead to much. Natasha Butterfield is very good at not being seen when she doesn't want to be. Now she wants to be visible, even though that means debunking her whole Painswick scheme. Clearly something else has turned out to be more important. Hopefully at some point she will let on about what that is. There's going to be a terrible aftermath over the whole Painswick thing. I can see it coming. So many people have stopped believing Painswick is real that there's going to be some mess as they get to grips with the idea that really it was there all along. But people are resilient and, on the whole, very good at lying to themselves so as to cover up any and all evidence of having been persuaded of things that were blatantly untrue. So, there's that, at least.